lately I've been very into the idea of constants in somebody's life. But I feel like as a broader whole, there's a kind of constant within human society and culture. So we look through, let's say, obviously we can't go back in time yet. So we look at remains, human remains from, you know, tens of thousands of years ago. And what do you really see when you look at remains? You see, in the case of most fossils, like let's think about like dinosaurs, right? They're existing at a time where the Earth is hotter. Antarctica is not glacial at all. It's just a jungle, if anything. Um, it's harder for things to be preserved. So fossilization as a whole is not a guarantee. I mean, obviously, the way the carbon cycle and the nitrogen cycle, all these elements, how the cycle works, is the body of the animal decomposes or of the plant, and then it's gone. It's in something else now. It's a cycle. So fossilization as a as like a is not a reliable principle. You know what I mean? It's like a when I die, the chances of my bones becoming fossilized and being able to be observed um, hundreds of thousands of years later is just not a guarantee, especially when it comes to millions of years ago. So I think a lot of the reason why you see, I mean, we have like this still decomposing bodies of, say, woolly mammoths because they're frozen in Russia and Siberia, in these untouched places where their bodies are able to be preserved. And that tells us a lot more about the animal. When it comes to human remains, yes, there are mummified human remains, mostly peat bogs, right? But, in the circumstances of like finding them in like a peat bog or finding them, you know, in ice, it's mostly because of an accident occurring here. Of course, I mean, peat bogs, it could be people sacrificing other people, but in general, one of the longest standing human practices within recent species like Neanderthals and H. sapiens is burial of the dead. So of course, burial is not a species wide. It's not a species wide practice. I mean, I believe in Persia they release their dead by putting them in towers where vultures would eat them. I think that's Persia, ancient Persia. Um, and like sky burials, and then Vikings put them in boats and like send them off to sea while burning. But I mean, burial is a very convenient way to just. I mean, from an evolutionary standpoint, it makes sense to want to bury your dead because the prevention of disease, right? But it's also very artistic in a way. I mean, people will be buried with bones, shells, flowers, things like that. And we see this. We see Neanderthals do this. We see, sorry, ancient humans do this. I'm not saying Neanderthals aren't ancient humans. They are, but I mean, H. sapiens. So where I'm getting at this with this is there's a constant that is observable because we know that humans for so long have buried their dead, or at least have had some kind of like ritualization to to death. What does this mean, right? I mean, it's beyond an issue of we don't want to get sick. Our idea of pathogens has been like is very recent, like our understanding of it. So as a whole, what is the purpose of burying the dead, right? And it's because, again, going back to constants, I think there's kind of overwhelming constant, which is probably maybe a circumstance of sentience. Sorry, being the question of where do we like where we go when we pass away. You know, we want to ritualize um, death because we know so little of it. I guess in a way. I mean, it's kind of like the way the Egyptians would do with their dead. You know, like slip the coin under the tongue, send them off to the afterlife. Sorry, it's kind of like let's do the picking order. Where was I? Right. Slip the coin under the tongue. I mean, we're doing as much as we can, right, in order to ensure that should this person go to an afterlife, they will be prepared for the afterlife. I mean, it kind of has to do with it, and also it's just like, I mean, grief is beautiful, you know. Why not ritualize? I mean, when you are in the state of mind where you are so stricken by this idea of loss, that you would want to ritualize it, that you would want to immortalize it or memorialize it. You would want to remember it, even though it is so like awful to think about, because the death of a person is one of the most significant things besides their birth. You know, you can't remember somebody without remembering their death. You can't think that somebody's alive unless you're like mentally ill. You know, probably has to do a lot with it. So, what is the nature of death, and where do we go when we die? I believe in God. I believe in heaven. I believe in God and I believe in heaven because I feel like I have no choice but to believe in God or believe in heaven, right? Of course, I was born Muslim. I probably would not be Muslim if I was not born Muslim. I probably would not be Christian or Jewish. I don't know what I would be. Because, I mean, just in my own thinkings, there's different ways. I feel like there's kind of illogical aspects of everything. But I'm content with my place as a Muslim. I believe I'm a good Muslim. I pray. I believe in God. I don't do wrong. I try to do as much good as I can. But sometimes I think about heaven and it's like I don't know if I'll go. Especially when I was a little bit more of a deviant, I guess. So what is going on here? So what is the nature of death? I feel that when people die, they will go to heaven. I feel as though the punishment of eternal torture, I feel as though this idea of hell is not something that is so. I mean, when I read the Quran, it's like about, you know, damnation. It's about. It's the same as Christianity. You know, the unbelievers will burn, the wrongdoers will burn, and those who do good, and those who believe will go to heaven. In the gardens in which wine and honey and milk flow in rivers, you know. But I mean, I feel like the fact of the matter is that there is nothing that you can do that's wrong enough to warrant going to hell. I feel like hell is such like an awful, like the idea of hell is just so terrible that no God would be willing to send somebody there just for the purpose of their unbelieving, you know? I mean, I feel as though it's completely illogical. This kind of belief where you know, if you don't believe, you'll not go to heaven. I believe, even if those who do not believe in God, oh, that's a new high score. I don't. This doesn't really count though, because there's so much open space. Sorry. I believe if you do good, then there is no. There's nothing that warrants going to hell. Does that make sense? Like, I feel like, you know, I used to work at Safeway, right? The grocery store. And I'd see, you know, some old lady, all kind. You know, some white lady that, okay, she's not Muslim. And if my beliefs are correct, then would I be believing that this woman will go to hell in the afterlife? I don't think so. Obviously, the kind of thing is judgment is not for, well, as at least in Islam, it's that judgment is not for us men, or well, men as in human beings, to pass unto others, because it is solely the jurisdiction of the Almighty, right? But I mean, eternal damnation is just such. It's like just like rationalize it, right? Could you? It doesn't make sense to go to hell within all the things you can do in a human lifetime. I mean, like, what could you do? It sounds like Hitler, right? Like, who else deserves to go to hell? I don't think anybody deserves to go to hell. Oops. I think it's illogical to think that somebody deserves to go to hell, because for every mistake that I have made in my life, for every wrongdoing I've made in my life, I do good as well. You know. And we are. I mean, humankind is. We, the men, are humans are multifaceted. You know. And this is how God made us. So how would God punish us? I don't know. You tell me. Leave a comment below. So, what is the nature of death? I believe it's unending until, you know, supposed resurrection, which isn't supposed to. Okay, I mean supposed as in, you know, according to my beliefs, right? The day, the day of judgment. But who are we to say? Because religion has been, I mean, as far as people understand, rituals and religion have been a feature of human civilization since before civilization. You know what I mean? Even in the smallest things, like burying the dead with flowers, to go back to that. You know. But yeah. In the Quran, obviously, there's a lot of emphasis on pagans and those who worship other gods, the polytheists. But I mean, no matter what you do on earth, what does who you pray to matter? Of course, I belief in God is central to my function as a human being. Obviously, I really do not want to like be committing something like egregious here, or offend anybody. But I mean, I feel like it's a non-offensive take to say if you do good, you deserve to go to heaven. Is religion a matter of? Is religion holding us back? I recently did a project for my African American Studies class, in which this was part of the exam. So I looked into religion and its influence on African Americans. Right. My main point here is Christianity, especially, has been like such a um kind of like a I use the word double-edged sword, right? Where um the slave owner would keep the the slave illiterate and say, obviously they would convert the slave to Christianity, or the slave at that point would be born to Christianity, and the slave owner would say, I mean, this is your land and life, you know, they can't read the Bible, so they just lie to the slave and tell them, you know, this is how it is, this is what God says, even though it's not what God says in the Bible. But how would they know? Because they can't read, you know? So through that mode, it's Christianity is able to keep uh, Christian slaves, you know, complacent with their line in life, you know? Whereas, you know, it's a double-edged sword because later on, especially, Christianity is such a weight, like a mobilizing factor for these people, you know? Like, for example, Martin Luther King Jr. was a, this is, beyond, this is like, you know, broad scope, African Americans. MLK Jr. was a minister, he was a preacher. So clearly, I mean, his sermons, he would rally people. And it's not just him, it's other people as well. They would use Christianity as this mode of change. But I mean, when religion itself is such an old concept, as far as like, I mean, maybe inferred. Again, it's kind of that question, like, could it really be considered to be? What is the purpose of religion? It's to keep people comfortable, maybe. You know, I mean, people don't want to think about death. People don't want to think about the question that I just asked. You know, what is the nature of death? What will happen once people die? You know, and it's like people want to believe that they go to paradise. People want to believe that if they do good, and if they love, and if they live life to their fullest, doing good, staying out of trouble, that they'll go somewhere nice. I had a sunflower last year, or at this exact time. I grew it from a seed. And sunflowers die pretty often, like, you know, they bloom and then they die. I wonder if sunflowers go to heaven. I like to think about my grandmother being in a better place, you know, with maybe the rest of her family. It's hard to imagine her watching over me, given all the bad I do in my life, you know, things that I don't want my grandma to see me doing. Art is probably one of the most important things a human can participate in. I think there's seldom more important that you can be doing besides art. I think it's one of the most beautiful forms of human expression. I think art is human expression. I think if you want to express yourself, it's art. Through any means, you know? Art is one of those things that was... it's just too hard to define. this was the argument of what is love, right? Love is a very deeply human thing, I feel like. Or at the very least, it's reserved for intelligence, right? Elephants grieve. Elephants carry the bones of their dead and bring them to graveyards. Or, graveyards, quote unquote. An elephant graveyard. Animals cry. Chimpanzees die of grief. Is it selfish to imagine that the human experience is a unique one? I wrote about what it means to be human for my college essay. I'd read a lot. I'd become like very fascinated with this idea of other human species, right? Because I mean, I say that as in, we are Homo sapiens. There are Neanderthals. There are Denisovans or Denisovans, depending on how you say it. There's one that's correct. I forgot which one. But how could we claim one single human experience when, I mean, as far as we know, there are nearly like over 20 different species under the genus Homo, you know? We are only one experience of that broader leaf, you know? We're one petal on the stalk, you know? But we're the only one left. I wonder about those circumstances. I wonder if that's how it's meant to be, you know? A lot of the Neanderthal genome exists in humans still. I believe I think it goes to say, I can make the inference that we've probably mingled with Neanderthals more than any other species in the genus Homo. Of course, there are, species in that genus which are, what we Homo sapiens have derived from. So obviously, oh damn, it's a completely. We could not have coexisted with them, you know. But then there's Neanderthals, there's Denisovans who we've, mated with even, we've shared human bonds with without even knowing that there's a difference between us, you know. It's like two people who see each other, who laugh together, who love together, who become inseparable, who experience every facet of what it means to love, to die and to live, together, without even knowing, they're so derived from each other that they're not even the same species. But they're people, It's interesting. I mean, I see. It's kind of funny. So, right. There's a theory that Neanderthals became extinct because they mated with us so much. And our genome was just so much stronger, I guess. I don't know. That they just, it's not like they went and got slaughtered, or like by disease or some asteroid or something. It's more like they just reproduced so inefficiently with humans that, sorry, with Homo sapiens that, they just fizzled out, or more like became absorbed in our genome. So I was gonna say, I look at reconstructions of Neanderthals. I mean, the women, not really my type, But actually, I think I'm pretty sure the majority of no, I don't think it's actually like a real thing. I don't know, but I'm pretty no, I'm not gonna make that claim. But I think like a lot of it had to do with Homo sapien women reproducing with Neanderthal men over Neanderthal women reproducing with Homo sapien men, because Neanderthal men, are stocky and like muscular and like probably maybe higher in testosterone or something. They're just overall just like a more physically strong species, right? So that could be more. It would be more desirable, and for a partner to reproduce with a stronger male, more capable of taking care of children, and even the woman, or especially the woman. Strong genes. Well, clearly not strong enough, huh? So who won out in the end, huh? I don't know. Like, like this video if you would marry a Neanderthal. Like, you really gotta wonder, like, were they like Neanderthal babes? I don't know. Maybe Denisovans are more my type. But I read this thing. Oh, damn it. I read this thing pretty recently that said, I was reading about mammoths, right? Because I did a project for chemistry about elephants. I was looking through taxonomy, right? And I'd known for a while that Asian elephants. Okay, right now there are three extant elephant species: Asian elephants, the African bush elephant, and the African forest elephant. Um, so African elephants, both of them are laxodontids, I think is how you say it. I think that's what the genus would be called. Laxodonts. And so they're related to the straight-tusked elephants like Paleoxodon, things like that. Whereas the Indian elephant is right. So the genus is Laxodonts, or whatever, right? It's that. But Asian elephants have the genus Elephas, right? So the Asian elephants and um, African elephants aren't even the same genus, you know? Like they're very far removed. In fact, to the point where, as I said, Asian elephants are more related to straight-tusked elephants like Paleoxodon, which are like these huge, like even bigger than other elephants. Um, well, as the name implies, they're these straight-tusked elephants, who I guess would look more like an African elephant. I guess in most reconstructions. And then the genus Elephas it contains, well, it doesn't contain. It's not the same genus as I'll make a correction right there. I believe straight-tusked elephants are in the genus Paleoxodon, whereas Paleo as an ancient, right, as an old, while African elephants today are they're just Laxodons, right? So they're not the same genus, but they're most related to each other, right? So we have Elephas, Paleoxodontids, and then Laxodontids, right? Whatever. If I'm wrong, you understand what I mean. Like I mean, I'm saying the name of them. Um, and then there's Mammuthus, right? Which would contain Columbian mammoths, woolly mammoths, all the mammoths, right? So mammoths would. Oh, well, let me continue with that first. My point being, Indian elephants are taxonomically more closer, or I guess like on a phylogenetic tree, they're closer to mammothus, African sorry, woolly mammoths, things like the Colombian mammoths, things like that. They're more related to mammoths than they are to African elephants, which is pretty funny. Because I mean, you think about them being like, you think like, oh, they're so close, right? They're just both elephants. No, it's pretty interesting because they are way more far removed than you think. The difference is, I mean, Asian elephants are smaller, and the males, they're actually asexual dimorphism beyond just size. So the males have tusks and the females don't. Whereas in African elephants, the females and the males both have tusks. It's pretty interesting. Like equal size, I'm pretty sure. I'm sure males are like a little bit bigger, but I mean it's really negligible, I feel like. So anyway, yeah, so that's a pretty interesting like little like thing about genetics. Furthermore, here's a story. Mammoths in general, we're not discovered. I mean, tusks have been because on the fossil record, mammoths went extinct so little time ago. I'm pretty sure there's something like I heard or something I always hear like mammoths went extinct while they're still building or there's still woolly mammoths around while making the pyramids. Yeah, so we're talking about like BC, but or there's BCE if you're modern, but fossil record wise, they're so close to us right now. So I mean, people have been finding woolly mammoth tusks all the time, but no one knows what the hell they are. There's so many people don't even know what elephants are back then. Like, why would they know what an elephant is unless they're living in Africa? So here's my point. There was near I think it's Fort Stono. I think it is or Stono Creek maybe. I don't know where the Stono Rebellion took place. The slave rebellion. Before the slave rebellion, there was there was slaves working in the river. I forget for what. Maybe I want to say gold panning, but it doesn't make sense though. Maybe I don't know. They're in the river though, and I mean they find like these huge molars, like teeth, and they show it to the people like, dude, what the hell? Like they're slave owners. It's kind of weird, and slavery has come out. American slavery has come out twice so far, but yeah. And show it to their slave owners, and they'd be like, "What the hell is that?" And then the people, the enslaved Africans, would be like, "These are elephant molars," because they're from Africa, and they've seen elephants, and they've seen elephant molars. So yeah, these are. It's kind of a messed up situation. Like, yeah, these are elephant molars. And then they get like the naturalist in from like Britain, and then be like, oh yeah, these are elephant molars. So you're like, okay, there's freaking elephants here. There's elephants walking around here in North America, in the United States. I mean, there were mastodons, Colombian mammoth. I don't think woolly mammoth were in the United States. I think no, maybe they could have been because Siberia is so linked with. Yeah, that makes sense. I think they were in North America. Fact check me. But I think mastodons were a little bit more prominent. I think mastodons are like very recognized globally, at least for patriotism. I think Thomas Jefferson was like super into mastodons. One of them was. Actually, Lewis and Clark on the expeditions, they were supposed to go find mastodons because we were like, where the hell are these elephants that are in the U.S.? But they're dead. But yeah, that's funny. I think that actually is like really interesting. They just recognize like, oh yeah, these are just elephant molars. But yeah, guess I'll wrap things up. See how long I can go here. I have a lot to do on Wednesday, next Wednesday. It's kind of annoying. But I have my senior award ceremony, and then I have my AP Chem exam, and then I have a meeting after school for NCH, my honor society. Oops. Oh, and I have senior picnic. But yeah, this is the rat race now. You know what I mean? I mean, we're just waiting to go home. I have a Chinese bridge competition. I gotta work on. Oh, emo goose. It's good. I think I need one more for original cast now. Mad Wizard. Yep, this is a rat race though. I have my Chinese bridge competition. It's gonna be a pain. But everything's good in the world, man. Who am I to complain? It's adorable. I forget me now. What is this from? Like, what is this referencing? Well, either way, there's a forget me not. And I want you to not forget to leave a comment on this video. If you made it all this way to the end, tell me I like you, Mateen. You're cute. Put it in the comments, please. Funniest comment gets a pin. Alright. Thank you so much for watching. Share with your friends. Just leave a comment. I love it all, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you. God bless. If you believe.